It's actually getting down to the wire here in terms of Joe Biden picking his VP nominee. They'd set the deadline originally as August 1st. That's actually this weekend, but they're saying that may push now that the convention is a little bit later. But one of the top contenders, obviously the entire time, if not the top contender, has been Kamala Harris. So there's some new reporting in Politico about what some of the concerns around Kamala would be. And look, no surprise to you all, I am not particularly excited about the idea of Kamala Harris as the VP pick. I don't think that she really stood for much during her presidential campaign. It was not ultimately very successful. But the weird thing here to me is that the problem that they have with Kamala was the debate stage moment when she challenged Joe Biden, which to me was actually the strongest moment of her entire campaign.
Yeah, and it's such a weak complaint here. So this is all from Chris Dodd, who is an old-time friend of Biden. He was a senator from Connecticut, ran the Motion Pictures Association, and he's now helping select, the Biden VP. So he talked to Kamala. This is according to Politico, and he asked her about the ambush on Biden, and she laughed, and she goes,
ambush.
Yeah, ambush, right. She laughed and just said, hey, look, that's politics. She had no remorse. And he's like aghast that she should have no remorse. It's a competitive primary. She's right. It is politics. And many of us called it insincere at the time, because she had her T-shirts and all that stuff ready to go. But look, man, that's the game. Like, seriously, you can't take that one hit. It didn't end up mattering. You dramatically won the primary. She ultimately bowed and endorsed you. What does it matter anymore? It's just such a weakling attitude.
It really, really is. And that first debate, it was her top moment, really. I mean, she had a really big launch. Thousands and thousands of people came to that launch. She delivered a good speech. She'd had that debate where she was on it. I mean, just from a sort of political performance standpoint. Now, after the fact that they had the Instagram ready to go of that little girl was me and the T-shirts and whatever did make it all feel a little prepackaged and insincere. And then on the actual hit regarding busing, she ended up admitting that she basically agreed with him. And that was sort of it was sort of a microcosm of her campaign in the whole, that it was a little more theater than an actual vision or substance for what she would want to do as president of the United States. But I just find it so ironic that performance, which was, to my view, like her best moment in terms of her entire campaign, would be the thing that would detract from her VP prospects. Let's actually take a look at that moment during the debate.
I will say also that in this campaign, we have also heard, and I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden, I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. So I will tell you that on this subject, it cannot be an intellectual debate among Democrats. We have to take it seriously. We have to act swiftly. As Attorney General of California, I was very proud to put in place a requirement that all my special agents would wear body cameras and keep those cameras on.
And look, there were essentially 2 times where Joe Biden really took on water. Well, 3 times. That was the first one. I mean, he took a real measurable...
Very first time he ever took a drop.
Measurable hit in the polls, because mostly people just left the gloves. I mean, they just never took the gloves off with Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders included. The other time was when his team actually went after him a bit on Social Security, trade, et cetera.
And Iraq.
And then when he failed to perform in Iowa, that's when the third, like his own manifest sort of failure to launch in Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada, that was the third time. But the fact that you have someone who could deliver a line like that that would actually land, even though ultimately it turned out to be kind of too prepackaged and she didn't really agree with the principle she was trying to articulate there. The fact that you have someone who could land that kind of a punch, I would think would be something you would want in your nominee. But I think it gives you a window into his mentality here. He wants someone who he feels will be completely loyal, lockstep with him, is going to carry on, whatever the ideology is that he sort of espouses in office, that you don't have to worry about straying even one little bit. And so even that prepackaged debate moment may be too much for him.
Yeah, it's his fundamental inferiority complex, I think. And Politico has a story about this, about how really they don't really know what to do here. They've got Karen Bass, they've got Kamala, they've got Elizabeth Warren, they've got Keisha Lance Bottoms, they've got Susan Rice, many of these other women, but none of them they see, in his eyes, lives up to what he wants. And what it seems to be, it's like we were talking about. He wants loyalty, and he doesn't want anybody to upstage him. I think he's actually afraid that Kamala would be able to upstage him just out of her sheer, ability to speak coherently. And I think that's a big problem for him, which is that, look, at the end of the day, people, yes, they're voting against Trump. People need some assurance. I mean, this is an old man who's running for president.
Yeah.
Whoever is your vice president has a realistic chance of being president of the United States, if not during your term, then at the very least after your term and after you retire. So that is something, or you lose your election bout or you win 2 terms, and after that, he's got a very serious choice here, and his criteria is one that's very personal, has nothing to actually do with policy or anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's hard for me. It should be something that I guess that I care a lot about. It's hard for me to really get too excited about which of these candidates would ultimately be the VP, because I think whoever it is, it's basically going to be the same end result of this very standard issue, Clinton-esque, Obama-esque, Biden-esque type of neoliberalism. Some sort of whatever, whoever he picks, I don't think it really makes that much of a difference. But, the fact that he really wants that loyalty piece and that personal comfort piece is part of why Susan Rice has also been elevated recently in the stands. New York Times is out with a piece this morning about her prospects and how she may be moving to the top of the list. I really, I really thought it was looking like before the George Floyd protests, I really thought it was looking like it would be Amy Klobuchar.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
With her out of the running, I really couldn't say out of this list. It's very hard for me to say who ultimately he will pick.
I just don't know. I have to think, though, that, look, the country doesn't care about foreign policy, even though they really should. I mean, it's one of those things where, remember, the president has immense, impact and all that. Susan Rice is somebody with a horrific track record. Libya, Afghanistan, Iraq, Rwanda. You can go all the way back to that. The Cold War. I mean, her record is horrific if you care about, neocons and foreign interventionism and neoliberalism. She kind of embodies that. But it's a smart move, because I bet that if, you attack her on Libya, the country's going to be like, look, we got bigger problems in Libya, right?
It's true.
But look, Iraq destroyed this country. So did Afghanistan. And the amount of money that we spent over there, along with the financial crisis, these have real impacts, and you have to really think about it when you're selecting somebody for president.
Well, and with that in mind, I want to kind of amend the comment I just made that they'll all be basically the same. She is the one that actually has somewhat of a formed ideology on an area in foreign policy where it makes a difference what voices you have in the room, especially because what we know of Joe Biden is he doesn't have a cohesive or coherent foreign policy view. It's more like this sort of, based on personal rapport for the individual world leaders.
Exactly,
and, so he's very influenced, I think, by who is in the room making the arguments. And so adding one more voice that is, pro-intervention, shifting it just even that little bit more in that direction could be a really negative outcome of having Susan Rice as potential vice president.
Really could.
All right, we'll have more Rising for you after this.